From the world of politics to the world of business, this is Balance of Power. Live from the Democratic National Convention in Chicago.
From Bloomberg's Chicago studios at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Welcome to Balance of Power alongside Kaylee Lines. I'm Joe Matthews.
This is Bloomberg TV and radio, and it is day 4, the culmination of a historic shakeup in American politics, with Vice President Kamala Harris set to accept her party's nomination for president tonight.
Crescendo on the convention will also bring Democratic voices from across the swing states, including Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona, Governor Roy Cooper of North Carolina, Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan.
Not unlike our program tonight, we'll be joined live in Chicago by Representatives Hillary Scholten of Michigan, also Dan Kildee of that state, Senator Michael Bennet of Colorado, and Washington Congresswoman Suzan DelBene, chair of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, who spoke at the convention last night. And last night, of course, was one that was fully loaded on stage in Chicago, culminating with the nomination acceptance from vice presidential candidate Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota. But tonight is the big night for Vice President Kamala Harris, perhaps the biggest moment of her political career.
That's for sure. I think we can admit that it is here. Coming over the course of 4 weeks to this moment, Kamala Harris will accept her party's nomination. Kaylee, we're going to hear from a lot of other voices tonight as well, but that's the purpose. This is the finale, the final night of the DNC here in Chicago. And there's been a lot of talk about when she might start, having had some very late nights around here, how long the speech will go, and to what extent we get any granular when it comes to her policy proposals.
Yeah, will we be able to wrap by 11 p.m. Eastern time?
That's a big question.
Is the question. Of course, the program begins formally just about an hour and a half from now, but people are already filing into the United Center, and that's where we find Bloomberg's Tyler Kendall, who is live on the convention floor now as we get ready for night 4. Tyler, what are you seeing?
Yeah, hey, Kaylee, the energy is high here on the floor for the 4th and final night of the Democratic National Convention. Of course, as you've been mentioning, the marquee tonight is when Vice President Kamala Harris will formally accept her party's nomination for president and make history as the first woman of color to be a presidential nominee. We're going to show you around here, see how high the energy is in the room tonight. Everybody already sitting down in their seats so that they can witness history tonight. We're planted firmly in the California section, of course, a nod to Vice President Kamala Harris as she tries to reintroduce herself to voters. Now, Democrats all week have been trying to capitalize on the energy that we are feeling in the room tonight, but they're also warning that it is going to be a tight race come November. They're urging everybody that they cannot lose this momentum that they have found in recent weeks. For a sense of the messaging that we might hear about this fight ahead, I want you to take a listen to Governor Tim Walz, now the vice presidential nominee, addressing the convention last night. Take a listen to what he told voters here.
Watching is to get in the trenches and do the blocking and tackling. 1 inch at a time, 1 yard at a time, 1 phone call at a time, 1 door knock at a time.
Tonight marks that turning point for the campaign. Once the convention wraps up, we are in crunch time in the race to November. Now, we are expecting Vice President Kamala Harris to reintroduce herself to voters, but I'm also going to be watching for if she says anything related to her policy as voters try to figure out the rest of her agenda. So far, we've heard a lot about the vibes, the mood in here, but voters are also looking for some more concrete policy details because Joe and Kaylee, as you know, Vice President Kamala Harris has yet to sit down for a one-on-one interview since she became the party's presumptive nominee, although we do know that she's committed to do so by the end of the month.
Bloomberg's Tyler Kendall bringing us to the floor of the Democratic National Convention on this night of nights. We thank you, Tyler. She'll have more, of course, later on from the convention hall. Last night, indeed, Tim Walz was the headliner, giving his acceptance speech, the vice presidential nomination. Here's a piece of that talk.
If you're a middle-class family or a family trying to get into the middle class, Kamala Harris is going to cut your taxes. If you're getting squeezed by prescription drug prices, Kamala Harris is going to take on Big Pharma. If you're hoping to buy a home, Kamala Harris is going to help make it more affordable.
Joining us now from the convention hall is Michigan Democratic Congressman Dan Kildee here in Chicago for the festivities. Congressman, it's good to see you, and welcome back to Bloomberg TV and radio. I feel like you're cut from similar cloth as Tim Walz, but it's no mystery to us why your governor, Gretchen Whitmer, is going to be speaking on this important night at the convention. A lot of people think Michigan is going to decide this election. So what do voters in your state need to hear tonight, the messaging from Chicago that will make them vote Harris-Walz?
Well, I think you're right. Michigan is the key state, could be the key state. What they're looking for, number one, is a ticket in Kamala Harris and Tim Walz that has the same American experience that so many of us in the Midwest have had. Growing up in, modest circumstances, having to work hard in order to make their way in life, and then reaching back and allowing other folks to have that same opportunity. So it's around access to an affordable home, what Vice President Harris has already talked about in terms of a program to provide additional support for those people who don't currently own their own home, to give them a chance to do that. But also some of the policies that are already in place that we are going to defend, the right of a woman to make their own reproductive health care decisions. Those are the sorts of messages that the people I represent want to hear. Some reassurance that they understand the struggles of American working families and are going to do something about it, and that we're going to protect the freedoms that so many people have worked so hard to secure for us. The energy is good, and the policies, I think, are more aligned with the American people. We just need to see and hear that.
Well, and as we talk about what your constituents in particular and the people of Michigan want to hear, we have heard a lot about that notion of freedom and kind of these broad strokes ideas. But given we're only 75 days out from this election, do those people not deserve more specifics at this time? Does she need to get granular on that stage tonight?
Well, it's pretty specific to know that one party supports a woman's right to make their own choices about when and whether to have a family, and another party wants to take that right away. That's really specific. But when it comes to these broad issues, there will be a chance to roll out the specific policies. But let's face it, these conventions, these campaigns are largely about the values and the direction that the country will go. Do we have a candidate and a potential administration that recognizes that everybody ought to have a chance to own a home? Yes. And so there will be time for us to roll that out, but it is not the case that these conventions have become policy seminars. They're about the direction that the country will take, number one, and secondly, a measure of the people seeking these high offices, a measure of their character, of their values, of their life experiences. Because when we're electing a president and a vice president, we're electing more than just an automaton who can spit out policy prescriptions. We'll get those, but we're electing people. Mm-hmm. And what people want to see, voters want to see, is somebody who gets them, who understands them, who respects them. And I think there's a real distinct difference between the two parties on those questions.
Congressman, last night was all about introducing Governor Tim Walz, someone you know better than most people ever will. And I wonder what it is as they introduce Kamala Harris's running mate to the nation, as he introduces himself. What do you want people to know about Tim Walz, other than the flannel shirts, which I understand are real?
They really are. What I want people to know is that the guy they saw on stage last night is the same guy who's been my friend for the last 12 years. He's as authentic as they come. That's Tim Walz. And he's like your neighbor. He's like the guy who, when you move into the neighborhood, he comes over with a plate of cookies for you. That's how I felt when I arrived in Congress. He'd been there a few years before I did. So what you get with him is the genuine article, nothing phony. And I think people are looking for that. Folks want to turn the page away from this sort of dark, negative, narrow, angry form that the political scene has taken in America. And I can't think of a better breath of fresh air to help make that happen than the selection of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz.
All right, Congressman, great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us live outside the United Center here in Chicago. That's Democratic Congressman Dan Kildee of Michigan. And still ahead, we'll be joined by another Democratic lawmaker, Senator Michael Bennet of Colorado, will be with us next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio live from the DNC.
There is a new spirit and energy in the Democratic Party for this election. It started when the decision was made by Joe Biden to step aside, a selfless decision that I respect him for very much. And that new attitude and approach is something that Donald Trump's been unable to match. He just can't do it, and he's frustrated by it. That's why he says these bizarre things about, we'll have one election, this will be the last one. What in the hell is he talking about? This is America. He doesn't get to dictate it. The Constitution makes it clear what the law is.
That was Democratic Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois earlier today, speaking with us on the energy in the Democratic Party at this time as we get ready for night 4 of the Democratic National Convention here in Chicago. That's where we are live on Bloomberg TV and radio. I'm Kaylee Lyons alongside Joe Matthew. And we go now to the United Center, where joining us live is Democratic Senator Michael Bennet of Colorado. Senator, welcome back to Bloomberg. It's always great to talk to you. It certainly has been a very energetic week here in Chicago. The question we have been asking many of your colleagues, though, is how you keep that going when there's still 75 days to go until November. Do you worry that your party could leave here complacent?
Oh, I don't worry about complacency at all. We're going to have to go out and win this. We're going to have to go out and earn this. I do think it is the unity and excitement inside that building is extraordinary. I think our job is to make sure that, we're bringing the rest of the country along with this chance for America to turn the page. And that's what I think people want to do. So I believe we're going to be pushing on an open door there, but we've got to work. We can't take a single vote for granted.
Well, last evening we heard from Governor Tim Walz, Senator, the big introductory speech as he accepted the nomination. We're still hearing as Democrats frame him as the coach turned teacher and National Guardsman before he ever got into politics. Republicans are saying that he's a case of stolen valor, that he abandoned his brothers in arms before they were deployed to a foreign country. Should he be responding more forcefully to that?
I think that Tim Walz did an amazing job last night at this place to reflect the Midwestern values that he grew up with and that he has tried to transmit to his students through the distinguished career that he has had, both in public service and in the military. And I expect over the next few days we're going to learn more and more and more about that record, and that's going to be positive, not negative, for Tim Walz. It was a breath of fresh air, take it from me, from somebody who comes from the middle of the country, to hear somebody from the middle of the country on a national ticket. I'm just very, very gratified about that.
Well, Senator, of course, it wasn't just Tim Walz we heard from last night. We also heard from former President Bill Clinton, who talked specifically about foreign policy during the Trump administration. I'll remind you, sir, of what the former president said.
President Trump said nobody respected America anymore like they did when he was president. With a straight face, he cited as evidence of the respect that existed for us when he was there the presidents of North Korea and Russia. I'd rather have the people who respect us now.
Senator, we speak with you frequently on this program about foreign policy, and obviously Kamala Harris has had the ability to be vice president for 3.5 years now, has had a front row seat to many foreign policy decisions. To what extent does she need to lean on that experience tonight to draw a contrast with Donald Trump?
I don't know whether she's got to do it tonight, but I think she's going to have an amazing opportunity to draw a contrast with Donald Trump in the coming, few weeks, because the Biden administration, I give Joe Biden enormous credit for this, with Vice President Harris's help, I mean, has done an extraordinary job putting together the coalition that has supported Ukraine in its battle against the tyranny that Vladimir Putin represents. I think that it's pretty clear that Donald Trump would have tossed the keys of Ukraine to Vladimir Putin at the first chance that he got. That's what he says. That's not what I'm saying. And instead, what we've been able to do is rebuild the coalition that was so important to us during the Cold War. We've had countries from all over Europe and Southeast Asia even joining that coalition against that aggression. Xi Jinping has had to think 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 times about whether he's going to invade Taiwan, because he now has seen the free world organize themselves under the leadership, or at least with the leadership of the United States. And it's a reminder that the U.S. really is the world's essential nation when it comes to protecting democracy and protecting freedom and protecting freedom. And I think that's what Bill Clinton is talking about. When Donald Trump was in power, he was coddling tyrants like Putin and like the leader of North Korea, sending him love letters and turning it into a big joke. There's nothing that's a joke about the nuclear arsenal that North Korea has. There's nothing a joke about the alliances that we've been able to rebuild since he shattered them when he was president of the United States. There's going to be a very clear distinction going in this election about our foreign policy versus, frankly, not the Republicans' foreign policy, because it is not even a Republican foreign policy. It's Donald Trump's own weird, crazy foreign policy.
I heard that weird a couple times this week, Senator, but I want to ask you, what happened to the protesters? We were told, and I bet you were warned, that tens of thousands would be here, angry about Israel policy, pro-Palestinian protesters that simply haven't materialized in the way a lot of the folks suggested. Is that because progressive Democrats believe that Kamala Harris will be harder on Benjamin Netanyahu than Joe Biden?
I think it's because the party has unified, because we know how important this election is. I mean, America is going to face, this isn't just a political choice, we're going to be facing a moral choice in November, and it's critically important, and I think as a result of that, we are unified. That doesn't mean there isn't disagreement in our country or in even the Democratic Party about what should happen in the Middle East, and I believe very strongly that we have got to get to a place where we're beginning to work with the parties there to negotiate a two-state solution that plausibly can allow people to have a more peaceful next half century than the one that has come before us. But that, and I think it's important for us to recognize that only the United States can really help broker that from here, which is just another reason why it matters who's our president.
He serves on the Intelligence Committee in the U.S. Senate, and with us today in Chicago, Democrat Michael Bennet of Colorado. Thank you, sir, as always, for the conversation. Coming up on Balance of Power, we'll have a look at where North Carolina falls in this presidential race with Bloomberg News Editor-in-Chief Emeritus Matt Winkler. It's next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio.
Is anything less expensive under Kamala Harris and Crooked Joe? Are you better off now with Harris and Biden than you were with a person named President Donald J. Trump? Do you know him? He's a nice gentleman. With 4 more years of Harris, your finances will never recover. They're never going to recover.
As Donald Trump just over a week ago at an event in North Carolina, of course, one of the 7 swing states we are tracking here at Bloomberg News. He asked the crowd if they're doing better now financially than when he was president. That's where we start our conversation with Bloomberg News Editor-in-Chief Emeritus Matt Winkler, who's up with a piece recently for Bloomberg Opinion you should read, where he discussed how North Carolina's economy is impacting this election in a unique way. And it's great to have you with us here, Mr. Winkler, as we continue our conversation in Chicago. This is a perfect element to include as we also prepare to hear from Roy Cooper later. You write that perhaps nowhere is the race for the Oval Office more transformed than in North Carolina. How come?
Well, the economy in the past 3.5 years has boomed, especially in North Carolina. And that is reflected in the contrast between the Biden and the Trump administrations. The Philadelphia Federal Reserve Bank has a wonderful set of U.S. coincident indices that show, by the way, adjusted for inflation, apropos of what we just heard, that North Carolina is 50% greater in improvement over the past 3.5 years than it was under Trump. And that's reflected, by the way, in any number of metrics, but let's look at some of the most important, which is jobs, personal income. And those two in particular have really taken off under the Biden during the past 3.5 years. For example, unemployment the end of last year was 3.3%. It never got that low, by the way, until late last year in this century. Okay, so that is the lowest it's been since 2000. And then you look at personal income, which is this year at a record personal income growth. And that's way above where it was as a trajectory under Donald Trump. And then finally, there are all these policies that have made North Carolina especially attractive that derive from, in fact, the CHIPS Act, the Relief Act, the Infrastructure Act, all these acts that were passed under the Biden administration. And so you have a really harmonic convergence of boom under Biden. And by the way, as I said, if you look at these Philadelphia Fed indicators, they are adjusted for inflation. So in other words, the well-being, the standard of living is higher today in North Carolina than it was when Biden took office in 2021. And it's even higher than it was in 2019 if you take out the COVID-19 pandemic.
All right, Matt Winkler, that's all the time we have, but it is a great piece. I encourage everyone to find it on the Bloomberg terminal or online. Again, Biden's North Carolina economy swings to Harris is the piece by Bloomberg's editor-in-chief emeritus. We appreciate your time, sir. And coming up next, while we're live in Chicago, we'll be joined by Democratic Congresswoman Suzan DelBene. She, of course, is the chair of the DCCC. It is her job to help House Democrats get back the majority, and she'll join us live here on set from the DNC next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio.
We have a very clear advantage in the fundraising. We have consistently outraised the NRCC, the Republican campaign finance operation, every single quarter of this election cycle. But it's not just that. Our incumbent frontline marginal members, they've outraised their opposition. The contrast is clear all the way down the ticket, from the White House pair of candidates down to legislative races.
Democratic Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz speaking with us here yesterday on Balance of Power about the impact of the Harris candidacy's momentum on races across the country and how fundraising is playing a role in the race for Democrats to flip the House. And joining us now here on Bloomberg TV and radio as we broadcast live from Chicago is Democratic Congresswoman Suzan DelBene of Washington. She is chair of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, DCCC. It is essentially your job, Congresswoman, to get as many Democrats in that House as possible. Clearly, as we've seen in the data, you have more money in the bank. It does feel like the energy here in Chicago may provide something of a wind at your backs. How many seats do you think Democrats could safely target to flip now?
Well, we need to net 4 more seats to take back the majority. So that is a key number. In fact, we have some pins out there that say 4 more and 24. We need 4 more seats to take back the gavels to make Hakeem Jeffries the Speaker of the House. So we are working hard across the country. We have 30 candidates. We call them our red to blue candidates. So they are looking to either keep open seats that we have or flip seats. And so incredible opportunities. And they're in New York and California and Iowa and Nebraska and Pennsylvania and Alabama. So all over the country, incredible opportunities, and we want a strong governing majority, so we're going to work hard to win as many as we can. Well, suddenly that seems like a real possibility that, in a way, did not 4 or 5 weeks ago, and the reporting has been pretty consistent that after the debate, the presidential debate, it was House members who started to fear the ramifications of Joe Biden staying in this race. It was Joe Biden's realization that losing the House in this next election was not an option. What does that say about the role your chamber is playing here in the Democratic Party and his decision to leave the race? Well, we've been running ahead this whole cycle. People have seen the chaos, the dysfunction, the extremism on the Republican side, and it's nowhere a better example than the House of Representatives, where you had speaker elections and them kicking out their own speaker, the ongoing challenge they've had to just fund the government. Yet you were still poised to lose seats, according to some. But we've been in an incredible position and had strong support across the country. So our candidates have been running ahead. They've had strong fundraising throughout this cycle. And our candidates and our incumbents are outraising their Republican counterparts. And at the DCCC, we're outraising our Republican counterparts too. So we just raised $17.6 million last month, $6 million more than the Republicans. We have more cash on hand. So we're in a strong position. And when you take all the energy and enthusiasm that you see here in Chicago, you see that on the ground all across the country. Volunteers turning out to help knock on doors, to make phone calls. There's a huge amount of energy and enthusiasm, and we're seeing it in every part of the country, and that's going to be key to helping us win. Well, we've been paying attention to a few specific demographic groups, the idea that Latino and Black voters may be more enthusiastic. Now, suburban women as well. We actually spoke earlier today with Tara Setmayer. She is CEO of the Seneca Project, who was trying to get women elected, Kamala Harris specifically, and she had this to say about mobilizing that vote.
The fact that the Republicans chose a ticket that wasn't exactly friendly to women's needs or rights, and that they're taking that for granted and almost disrespectfully insulting women like this, they're almost doing our job for us as far as messaging is concerned, because women can see through this. They can see through the insults. They see through the childless cat lady comments. And, every week it's a different set of insults for women, different demographics of women. And that mobilizes women.
How is the DCCC looking at trying to target and mobilize that specific group of voters? Well, absolutely, she's right. They are making the case, and they've made the case since the Dobbs decision. They're trying to take away reproductive freedom across the country. They want a national abortion ban. So that alone has been mobilizing women. We've heard the terrible stories of women being denied basic health care. So women are energized. We know in special elections since November of 2022, when abortion's been on the ballot, Democrats have turned out, and we've seen increased Democratic performance, and we've won, even in places like Kansas and Ohio and Virginia, in a special election in New York 3, where we gained one more seat. Even in Alabama, where a state legislative race, a seat that was very red, flipped to a Democrat. After that Supreme Court IVF decision. They're strong. That was a 30-point swing, by the way. Strong support. So we know abortion is going to be on the ballot in many of our battleground states across the country. Florida, Arizona, New York. This is really going to be critical for folks, because women are going to turn out, but people across the country, this is a critical issue. And voters are with us on this. So we're going to see enthusiasm and turnout across the country. And again, another reason why we're in a very strong position. You spoke at the convention last night at the DNC here, sounding pretty optimistic about your odds for taking back the House. Here's what she said.
In 2022, we came within 7,000 votes of the majority. So it's within our power to win these critical races. This election is about our rights, our freedoms, our democracy, and our future.
I want you to walk us down ballot, or maybe across the map is a better way to see it here, because we spend so much time talking about the presidential race in these 7 states in a world in which none of the others matter. How much more complicated is the calculation for someone like yourself, as Kaylee said, tasked with getting House members elected? Because your map looks a lot different than the presidential race. How local does it get? How different is that exercise?
It's a great question and is very different. People think about the presidential, which is very focused on swing states, or the Senate, where it is very focused on a few races because they aren't all up every year. But we are up every 2 years. So our map is over 60 seats across the country, and we have important races in states that are blue, like New York and California. We also have opportunities in swing districts, if you look at places like Michigan or Arizona. But we also have states like Iowa and Nebraska, Montana, where we have opportunities to pick up seats, even Alabama. So we're everywhere across the country. Absolutely, our candidates are focused on the issues of these districts. And we have independent thinkers, folks who are very results-oriented, running all across the country. And, that is a big difference between the House and some of the other races, and definitely the presidential. It will be very local. We've got a lot of races and incredible candidates. And so they are talking to folks in their districts, talking about the issues that matter. They want to come back to Congress to govern.
Well, so as we talk about your fundraising and the idea that you are outraising your Republican counterparts, when it's so many races, once you spread that money out, maybe it's just a lot that it has to go a very long way. We've had a few conversations about the sudden burst of fundraising we've seen after Harris has entered the race. Do you worry that that's going to taper off, or do you think this pace of donation is sustainable?
Well, we've been running ahead this entire cycle, so we've had strong fundraising and been outraising Republicans for the House because people know how close we are to taking back the majority. But we had our biggest online fundraising day after Vice President Harris announced her candidacy. We clearly see more and more momentum, and it's not only to the committee, the DCCC, but also to our candidates. I mean, they are outraising their opponents too. So important because those resources are critical for their races. We can support them, but they are also doing a great job directly themselves.
Well, I know you're running back into the hall. Have a fun night tonight. You don't have the pressure of speaking this time. You just get...
Exactly. Makes it a little easier.
I'm sure that's true. Democratic Congresswoman Suzan DelBene of Washington, we thank you. And we should note that Michael Bloomberg, founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP and this network, is a major donor to the House Majority PAC, the largest super PAC backing congressional Democratic candidates. As we continue, coming up, our special coverage here at the Democratic National Convention continues with more voices, and we'll look more specifically at some of the key issues for Democrats heading into November.
We've got a golden rule. Mind your own damn business. And that includes IVF and fertility treatments.
More where that came from ahead. Congresswoman Hillary Scholten of Michigan joins us next, live from Chicago on Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio.
Michigan is a key state, could be the key state. What they're looking for, number one, is a ticket in Kamala Harris and Tim Walz that has the same American experience that so many of us in the Midwest have had. Growing up in, modest circumstances, having to work hard in order to make their way in life.
Congressman Dan Kildee of Michigan speaking with us just moments ago here in Chicago outside of the United Center as day 4 of the Democratic National Convention now gets underway. The big speech later tonight from Vice President Kamala Harris. This is the finale. And joining us now is Dan Kildee's fellow Democrat from Michigan, Congresswoman Hillary Scholten. Congresswoman, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining us today. On Bloomberg TV and radio, you were the first member of the Michigan delegation to call on President Joe Biden to drop out of this presidential race. At the time, you said, quote, for the good of our democracy, unquote. This change at the top of the ticket has been historic. Does it improve Democrats' chances of winning Michigan?
I can't necessarily speak to the chances or any type of horse racing, but I know when I made my statement asking the president to consider stepping aside, I was echoing the voices of so many of my constituents who wanted me to stand up and say something. The threat of rising tyranny presented by a second Trump presidency was looming so large, and I knew that we needed a strong voice for the future at the top of the ticket. I think we're seeing how much Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have stepped in to take up the mantle and be that voice. And tonight is the finale of this incredible week, and we're so excited to hear her accept our nomination.
Well, Congresswoman, as you say, you wanted your constituents wanted you to stand up and say those things. What do they want Kamala Harris to stand up and say tonight? What do they need to hear?
They need to hear that she's going to be a true champion for the people. It's what she's done her entire career as a prosecutor, as the Attorney General, as a senator, and as vice president. You know, she has delivered on economic initiatives, from the bipartisan infrastructure law to lowering health care costs. We want more of that, more in droves, and I hope that she'll deliver a strong economic message.
Well, it's pretty interesting. Last night, Oprah took the stage at the Democratic National Convention. A surprise guest. I don't know, maybe you can tell us more about surprise guest this evening, but she had this to say about the differences between these two campaigns.
We are not so different from our neighbors. When a house is on fire, we don't ask about the homeowner's race or religion. We don't wonder who their partner is or how they voted. No. We just try to do the best we can to save them. And if the place happens to belong to a childless cat lady, well, we try to get that cat out too.
It was an interesting moment last night. One of the takeaways here that's been resonating on social media, Congresswoman, what's the message from this convention to suburban women in Michigan?
You know, it's that we're standing up for their rights. You know, I'm the first woman and mother in history to represent West Michigan in Congress, and I know that I hear from so many of my fellow moms, my fellow women, that they're still terrified that their rights to make their own decisions about their own health care could be taken away. You know, this is not just about abortion. This is about birth control. This is about access to IVF, as we heard Governor Walz talk about, you know, his path to making his own family complete. So, you know, we know the suburban women are motivated, they're activated, in Michigan in particular, where we codified our rights to reproductive freedom in 2022, but we know that those rights, those votes, could be undermined if a national abortion ban were implemented.
Finally, Congresswoman, you join us, of course, not just as a Democrat, but someone who sits on the House Small Business Committee. We know that small businesses have been struggling in an inflationary environment for years now. That environment does seem to be getting better. But as you just told us, Harris needs to talk about an economic plan tonight to your constituents in Michigan. Are you concerned that some components of that may be inflationary and weigh on small businesses and the everyday consumer alike?
Yeah, you know, we continue to just hear concerns from small business owners, from families like mine, struggling to put food on the table, cover healthcare costs, save for college. You know, they are deeply concerned. Inflation is one aspect of this. The cost of housing is another major concern throughout West Michigan. Affordable housing is in short supply, and you know, we know that we need a leader for the future who is going to address these things. In a place like West Michigan, I'm keenly aware that has not always been the Democratic Party, but we've also seen careless, reckless leadership by Republicans that has been anything but fiscally responsible, driving us to the brink of defaulting on our debt, causing us to lose our AAA credit rating, refusing to pass a sound budget even after we passed the Fiscal Responsibility Act in 2023, leaving small businesses in the lurch and wondering what will be the playing field. We can do so much better for the American people.
All right, Democratic Congresswoman Hillary Scholten of Michigan, thank you so much for joining us outside the United Center this evening. And still ahead, we'll be joined by our signature political panel as we count down to the final night of the Democratic National Convention here in Chicago. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio. Welcome back to Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio. We are live from the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, and it is finale night, night 4, with Kamala Harris set to speak and accept the nomination for president, the first woman of color ever to do so. It is a historic evening we're about to witness. It starts in less than an hour, and of course, we'll be joined by our signature political panel who are with us now. Rick Davis, Stone Court Capital Partner, and Jeannie Shanzano, Professor of Political Science at Iona University and Senior Democracy Fellow at the Center for the Study of the Presidency and Congress. It's a big night. You, of course, are with us for the long haul as we broadcast here from Chicago. But, Jeannie, this is going to be perhaps, as we've talked about all day, the largest audience Kamala Harris will get to address between now and Election Day. What does she need to do with her time tonight?
She needs to introduce herself. She needs to contrast herself with Donald Trump. I think she'll do that using Project 2025. And the reason we think that is because, of course, it's driving Donald Trump crazy because he said he has nothing to do with Project 2025, and Democrats have been using it all week. And then the other thing, I think she's going to have a theme surrounded by the fact that she is the embodiment of patriotism. And following up on Bill Clinton yesterday, because this is about the American public, not about her. And the idea being Donald Trump is all about himself. So those are the three big things I think we're going to see her do tonight.
Likely, as you've indicated, Rick, the largest audience that she'll face between now and the election. But we're also told that things are different now, and more people might actually see this on social media over the next couple of days or weeks. How do you do both? How do you address both audiences in one speech?
Yeah. First of all, I do think the debate will be her next shot at a huge audience, but she doesn't own that all to herself.
Sure.
Tonight is her night. And I think on the social media front, it's kind of interesting. We've been griping all week about how they've been letting all these sessions go past the prime time East Coast, 10 o'clock hour into, 11 and midnight. And there's a growing sense that that's actually a strategy that the convention is using to basically say, we don't care about East Coast prime time. This is all getting chopped up and sent through the social media currents. And, so we're just going to go ahead and keep breaking that barrier, right? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all went past prime time with their A guest. And I think tonight she's scheduled to appear at around 10:45. I'd be shocked if she's on before 11 o'clock. And so I think that's actually owing to social media. I mean,
that's
it
a
used
fail,
to be
isn't it?
Networks were the king, not anymore.
Wow. Okay. Well, if that's the case, we might expect some of the other speeches we're going to get tonight to go a little longer. We will be hearing from some other high-profile Democratic governors who we thought might run with Harris. Gretchen Whitmer will speak tonight. Roy Cooper will speak tonight. Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona will also speak tonight. What role do they serve as they try to build momentum toward her speech?
Yeah, I mean, it is such an important moment for Democrats to show that this is about the future. All the people you mentioned are young, up-and-coming Democrats who have a future in the party. And that's what they want to do tonight with the theme and what they've wanted to do all week. Turn the page. We always remember from 92 about it's the economy, stupid, which of course at Bloomberg it is, but it's also about the future. And that was the first note that James Carville had. This is about turning the page. And those people are going to say that and say to do that, you must support Harris-Walz.
Another Republican, or I don't know, former Republican, Adam Kinzinger, is going to be on the stage tonight. This has been interesting to try to get former R's to talk to the D's.
Yeah, Adam Kinzinger, who really became nationally known through his leadership on the committee that investigated the January 6th attack on the Capitol and really cut it with Donald Trump in that point. So, yeah, he's a fiery speaker. He's been out campaigning all around the country to try and elect people who think independently, and his whole slogan is put country first. Borrowed from John McCain, I might add. But, yeah, he'll be a great addition and another reminder that there are Republicans who are going to vote Democrat.
Well, we'll be watching. He's got a pretty good placement tonight on the schedule. Rick Davis and Jeannie Sheehan Zaino, we thank you. Of course, Rick and Jeannie will be back with us tonight for our special coverage of the Democratic National Convention kicking off in just 2 hours.
That's right. You can find us back here at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and we'll be on air until Kamala Harris wraps her speech. We'll see if that happens by the end of prime time. This is Bloomberg TV and radio.